I will say that this slide right here could be a whole workshop by itself. We could spend 2 hours talking about how do you homeschool in terms of the different approaches that you use to homeschool. There's well over 30 different methods to homeschooling, easily. I would strongly recommend that you get some books from the library to see people's different approaches to homeschooling. YouTube is very, very helpful in terms of just getting ideas. Again, you're just getting ideas. You don't want to mirror what someone else is doing because it may not fit your family, it may not fit your lifestyle. But you want to share what you do?
Yeah. One thing I want to say is that you have to like trial and error things. Yeah. Because every child, they learn differently, so you have to be able to see where your child's at. I incorporate textbooks. One of the things I was lucky to do over the summer is in a thrift shop I found great textbooks at a third grade level. The library is excellent. They have a whole section of educational movies. You get textbooks here as well. I try to incorporate games. She is 7, they lose their interest fast. So one of the things I did like early on when I was teaching her vocabulary words is I created a bingo board and I would put the vocabulary words on there. So after a while, subconsciously, she's learning the words. So, you have to make it fun, so you don't bore them. Have discussions with them, One thing that she's also lucky to do when it's time to read, she can just go sit on the couch and read and get comfortable. She doesn't have to sit at a desk, and feel like she has to read this book. As far as, are we on the curriculum yet? Okay, as far as subjects that I go over, so obviously you need your basics, your reading, your writing, your grammar, math. I do an introduction to science with her, world culture and geography, and one thing that my husband started earlier this year, because we both homeschooled, was an introduction to entrepreneurship. So teaching her how to sell, how to negotiate, invest, and all of that. But aside from the homeschool experience, like inside the house, every day should be a learning experience. One thing I was privileged to do last year is when I did spoken word and I sold books, I would take her with me, and then she can sell and see how things go. You get her thinking that she has to be an entrepreneur. So that's one thing that I did.
How many hours a day do you spend on the instruction?
Okay, so I start at 9 if I can, depending on how the day's going, and then we take a break around 12 to 1, and then we go until 3. So one thing that's a little hard for me is I have a 2-year-old. So when I started, I didn't have a 2-year-old, so it was much easier. So I kind of have to cater my schedule to him as well, making sure that he's not interrupting us because he's running around the house doing his own thing. So I try to put him down for a nap at a certain time so that I could continue with her. And then maybe at the end of the day, around like 1 or 2, I'll give her an independent assignment where she'll do it, and then I could go upstairs and cater to him. So you just have to figure out what works for you. Everybody has a different home situation.
I would say for when they're older, like my older son, we were able to get through. I mean, obviously he was in the 8th grade, so right, it's totally different from having a 7-year-old, right? Because their attention span is much longer. Once your kids get older, depending on what type of student they are, like my son was very, I want to play my video game, so I'm about to hurry up and knock this out. We would be able to get done with like everything I had designed for our curriculum in like 3 to 3.5 hours. 4 hours was a long day, and like I say, he would go straight through and do his. I combine English and social studies. I think that's the stupidest thing in the world, to have them separate when social studies is reading, and that's all you're doing in social studies is reading. So I combined what he was supposed to learn for social studies and what he was supposed to learn for English, so that was like one class, and then math and science were separate classes for him. So he would, like I said, for older kids. Now the same thing with me for my 2 younger kids. Our day is much more stretched out because I have a 2-year-old and I have a 4-year-old. So there are certain things that my 2-year-old can do that my 4-year-old can't do. So I have to have a longer day. So their day, I would say the curriculum that I have designed for them is pretty much the same thing. We go for like 2.5 hours, close to 3 hours, and then they get a break, and then we go back and do about another 2.5 to 3 hours in the afternoon, depending on what special they're doing that day, like whether they're having an art lesson or we're going to whatever special we're having that day. So
My day typically is from 10 till 3 is generally my day. Some people, if you're a morning person, you may want to knock it out quicker. Smaller kids don't require as much time. So maybe from 2 hours maybe is all you need with somebody that's in preschool or kindergarten or first grade to get through whatever you need for the day. Because keep in mind, the school system is based off of one person being in a classroom with 20 plus people. If it's just you one-on-one with your child, you won't require nearly as much time. But generally our day, because I have 2 children, is 10 to 3. During that period of time, the subjects that I work with my 7th grader on is math, we have literature, and our literature is literally me reading to both of them and us discussing the book I really enjoy. That's one of my approaches to teaching, is a very literature-based. And as you research different homeschool methods, you will learn that that's a certain style of teaching is through just reading with your child. But we cover literature, we cover math, we cover science. I'm very big on science because my children both are very hands-on type of learners. And again, that goes back to understanding what your child's learning style is. And that's something you can look up and find out what are the general styles that children learn. But both of them are very hands-on, so science experiments and things like that work really well for them. Art, we're very big on that. Both of my children are very playful, energetic, sweetest girls in the world, but very active. So I nurture that. So we do fun stuff. And I think that's something you got to think about too, as the teacher, so to speak, that you should really be tailoring it to them and not necessarily your own personal style. Because for me, I'm much more of a visual learner, and their style is totally different from mine. So I had to really adjust my own sensibilities. And when we talked about earlier qualifications in terms of teaching, I would say that the qualifications that you probably should be most concerned with are not in terms of your ability in terms of cognitive or teaching, but should be your patience, your flexibility, your ability to make something fun for them. Because they're not around a whole bunch of children. Even if you have 3 or 4 kids, it's still their brothers and sisters. They see them every day. So how can you make this interesting? And that's a constant challenge that I face as the mom. And how do I separate being their mother from being their educator?
By the time your child is 14, I don't know if we know this or not, but our children have the mental capacity of what Caucasians have when they are 21 at the age of 14. So by the time your child is 14, if you've done a good enough job of homeschooling him, and even though I only homeschooled my kid for 1 year, I believe I was able to get him just in a mind frame that they can handle their own when it's time for them to go to high school. So, and then just from the social aspects, that not to say that, for some kids you might want to homeschool all the way up until 12th grade, but for
someone's child just finished 11th grade and they want to homeschool them all of a sudden in the 12th grade, would any of you recommend that, or would you just say just finish?
It would have to depend. For me, it would have to depend on like where your child is. Like if they are a strong student and you're just like, you want to homeschool because of the curriculum is very racist or something along those lines, well at that point I would just really pretty much let them finish 12th grade and make sure that you got everything else that you needed outside, do a whole lot of stuff at home. But if it was something where they were like on the prison to pipeline system, or they were like SPED, or that means special education or what have you, I would definitely pull them out, because like the prison to pipeline system, it's once your child has an IEP, they are not going to receive even like your child's IEP can say they have to learn 5 syllables a year, and as long as they learn those 5 syllables a year, they can be promoted on to the next grade. So like I would say if you had, that would be on a very case-by-case basis. If you had something that was, like I said, your child is in special education or, IEP or something along those lines, I would definitely pull my child out of school immediately. But if they're a great student and they've already taken their SATs and all that other good stuff, then I would leave them in school.
Some homeschool online programs are actually separate schools in themselves. And in those cases, those are not actually homeschooled kids, even though they're technically at home doing the computer program, they're still not considered homeschooled kids. But then there are other children who are using some type of commercial curriculum in order to teach them, and those children would be considered homeschooled.
I can give a really good example of that. There's something called Study Island, right? And Study Island gives you from every grade, from kindergarten all the way up until 12th grade, it will give you the breakdown for English, math, science, what the state standards say you're supposed to learn every year, right? So as a homeschooler, you could use that, and that would be something like Sister Destiny said, somebody that is considered a homeschool, right? But K-12, which is an actual online program where your child is just going to school online, even though they are at home, they wouldn't be considered a homeschool student because K-12 is an actual, Ohio Virtual Academy is an actual school.
Yes, they can. Online, if you look, they said you can have your kids in the extracurricular activities, or if they want to play on a team, you would have to go talk to the school about it, but they can do that. And if you don't want them to do that, they also, in Euclid, if you go online, they have, softball teams. They have the cultural center over there on 222nd, the short. So you can put them in other activities, if you want them to have relationships with other children and stuff.
That's what I'm gonna ask about the
Yeah.
social aspect.
Only if you're homeschooling though. If they're in like an Ohio Virtual Academy, that's considered another school district that they're getting your kids' tax dollars.
Right.
So therefore you can't participate, because let's be honest, that's what it comes down to anyway. Who's getting the money from the state for this kid? And if Ohio Virtual Academy is getting the tax dollars from your child being in that school, then you can't play sports for Shaker. But if you're homeschooling and really nobody's getting the money, then the liability still falls on the state or the city, for your child to still be able to participate in extracurricular activity that the city offers.
That's really good.
In terms of curriculum, some of your options are to go through like a commercial provider. For instance, for math, I use what's called a BECA. That's who I get our books from for math. But there's a lot of different publishers that actually publish math books. So you could get your math book through publishers, your science book, your English, whatever subjects you're teaching. They're always going to be some type of commercial person selling materials that you could use as a means for teaching your child. I also create my own a lot of times, so I may have different books that I use for science purposes, and then depending on what we're learning, I will tailor that to what I want to teach my children. Keep in mind, if you are going to have an African-centered approach to teaching, you probably won't have a lot of options in terms of curriculum. You're going to either be creating your own, or there's some great, like Kamali Academy. I don't know if anyone uses that as a source.
Dr. Chikwe, he makes really good science
What's his
stuff.
name?
His name is Dr. Chikwe. He makes really good science materials. The Liberated Minds, I'm quite sure we're going to talk about this at some point, but the Liberated Minds Homeschool Convention, it's in Atlanta every year, and you can get, that's where I got a lot of my resources for the year that I was at home with my 8th grade son, or the year we were at home and I homeschooled him for his 8th grade year. I got a lot of my resources from that homeschooling event, and they sell a lot of curriculum and stuff like that. And it's always I think it's always in July, I think.
So you can use the library, you can buy resource curriculum, or you can create your own essentially for your curriculum. Different approaches that we use in our homeschool classroom or our homeschool space. I don't even really call it school per se. We do homeschool very relaxed, but I use lap book approaches. A lap book is basically like if you have this concentrated energy on this specific subject. So say we were studying the heart, my kids would create all these visual, cute little things that would be fun for them. So they would have a picture of the heart, and they would have little interactive type worksheets that they've put into this folder, and it's all in this cute little folder, and when they open it, all these cool things pop out, and this little extra pockets they can put information. So it's like this tool that they can use to kind of visually learn, but at the same time have this hands-on approach. And you can look that technique up. It's called lap booking, that families use to teach. LAP. Lap, it's like on your lap, and it's called a lap book. It's all one word. And it's a means of generally teaching like science concepts or historical type concepts you would use lap booking for. Unit studies is this more centralized approach to looking at something. So for instance, we may have covered reconstruction. So for 4 weeks, we might spend 4 weeks on the reconstruction period, and then I have certain things that I want to cover, and then we have different projects or something like that that we would do during this unit study. But again, it's just this centralized focus on a specific topic. You could do, I mentioned the literature-based approach where you kind of read with your child. Like I said, it's over 30 different ways. They have ways called Charlotte Mason, which is a European approach. Montessori is an approach that families use. So again, if you just kind of look up homeschool methods or get a book about it, it'll expose you to different styles that you can do.
I like problem-based learning. Like
So explain to them.
problem-based learning is basically where you give your child a problem and you tell them to solve it, and they learn from solving a problem. So it's thinking outside of the box, because as an entrepreneur, when you're selling things, you always have to be able to see like ahead of the curve and be able to solve problems that other people see as problems. That's how you make money as an entrepreneur. You have to be able to solve problems that people have, and that is where there is money. So using problem-based learning basically makes your child, that's really, I use a lot of problem-based learning with Najee. What I would do is, because I was still a teacher, I had access to like a lot of like stuff that we used in the classroom, right? So what I would do is I would take that and then I would just figure out how to make him learn what I wanted him to learn by asking him a question and then making him seek out the information. Because one of the things that I find that so many of our children are, and this like works my nerves, when I'm teaching something, oh, Miss English, what page is that on? You have a glossary in front of you, you have an index, and our children get so used to just being spoon-fed everything, like because they get used to just, because we're conditioning them to being like automated workers, like Sister Alicia said in her poem, we're conditioning them to be slaves, and we don't really have them to think outside the box. So I think that problem-based learning is an excellent approach to teaching children.
I don't think it has, not for me personally, because I've been able to supplement anything that I've needed in terms of resources or material. I may have to dig a little deeper to find it, but I've been able to find it. So I haven't felt like I've been at a loss or behind at all. And technology-wise, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about cost. But you do have to spend some money when you're homeschooling your children. And if you're already paying for your child to be in school, it may not be a big deal if you're paying something already. But if you're not paying anything, it is a sacrifice that you will have to make. So anything that they may not have access to technology-wise, or in terms of experiments, or in terms of field trips, you're now paying for all of that out of your pocket. So you have to make it up that way.
I would just like to say that I don't think that you can homeschool your child. We have this so Europeanized idea that we can't exist without money, right? Like, oh my God, there's no way that we can exist without money. If we don't have cash, we can't exist. That is so not true. As a chemist who, like, you have no budget in Cleveland public school system, so if you want your kids to do an experiment, it is coming out of your pocket. You can do so many experiments with what you have right in your kitchen, and you don't have to buy anything extra. You already have baking soda, you already have vinegar, you already have balsamic vinegar, you already have tomato powder. Like, everything that you need, you either can make a low budget version of, or you can get for free. The Cleveland Public Library is one of the best library systems in the country. Internet. If you have the internet, and everybody, even if your library card is suspended, you can still go to the library and get on the internet. And the things that they have available for free on the internet, like Khan Academy and just several other different interface sites that you can go to, like pbs.com and schooltube.com. They might be slightly Europeanized, but you can still get pretty much everything that you need to teach your child for free. It's just an investment of how much time are you going to spend seeking these things out. A nerd. So I'm a fan of being able to access all the journals, all the education, not educational journals, but like all the neurological, any type of medical journal that you want to access, right? That you normally have to pay a subscription fee for, that if you go to like Google Scholar and you're looking up research for whatever you're trying to prove, whatever. If you don't go through the library, when you try to actually read the entire article and not just the abstract, they'll tell you that you have to buy a feed to, you know, the American Journal of Medicine or, you know, whatever.
Stuff is expensive.
And it is very expensive, but if you go through Cleveland Public Library or Cuyahoga County Public Library, we have 2 excellent library systems. And for example, if you go to Cuyahoga County libraries, like I take my kids there 2 times a week because they have abcmouse.com for free. And yeah, as long as you have a library card, you can go in. Now,